A great Thursday to all of you, Steelers Nation. Welcome to another gathering of the Black and Gold. Smash that like button to show your support, drop your comment down below, and show the power of this fan base, the most passionate in the entire NFL. Remember, we are iron that never bends, fire that never burns out, and tradition that carries through generations. This is grit. This is fire in the eyes. This is a heartbeat pounding with every play. This is Pittsburgh Steelers, united, unbeatable, and eternal until the very end. Go Steelers! Now, let's get to it. Steelers Nation, imagine this for just a second. The black and gold walking into the 2026 season, not with Mike Tomlin on the sideline, but with a brand new leader shaping the future of this franchise. It sounds shocking, almost unthinkable, given everything Tomlin has meant to this organization. But the conversation is already happening, and the whispers around the league are starting to get louder. If the Steelers decide to embrace a rebuild and part ways with their longtime head coach, the name that keeps coming up is one that Steelers fans already know very well: Brian Flores. Now, before diving into Flores, let's address the Tomlin situation directly. The most likely scenario for 2026 is still that Mike Tomlin remains the head coach. He has proven year after year that he brings stability, mental toughness, and that unique leadership that few others in the NFL can match. His record in close games is unprecedented over nearly 2 decades, and the turnover culture he preaches has made Pittsburgh #1 in turnover differential across the entire league during his tenure. Players and coaches alike talk about him with unmatched respect. That's not something you replace easily, and it's not something ownership takes for granted. But let's be honest, stability doesn't guarantee eternity. If the 2025 Steelers underperform, if the team finishes with just 6, 7, maybe 8 wins, despite all the talent they've added, the conversation changes. A rebuild could be on the horizon. That means drafting a new franchise quarterback, moving on from some expensive veterans, and, yes, it could mean saying goodbye to Tomlin. The twist? If the Steelers do move on, it likely won't be a firing. The organization has too much respect for him, and there's that hefty contract extension to consider. Instead, a trade could be in play, and make no mistake, teams across the league would line up to give up premium draft capital for a coach with Tomlin's track record. We're talking a potential first-round pick, maybe multiple picks. For a team heading into a reset, that's hard to ignore. So here's where Brian Flores enters the story. The current Vikings defensive coordinator and former Steelers assistant has quickly become the top candidate in the eyes of many who follow this team closely. Why Flores? First off, credibility. If Tomlin leaves, it's going to sting in that locker room.
Players love him, respect him, and rally around him. Very few people could walk in and instantly earn that same respect, but Flores is one of them. He's already been in Pittsburgh, he understands the culture, and players like TJ Watt and Cam Hayward have praised his leadership and energy. That connection matters, and it gives him a huge advantage over outsiders. Second, charisma and leadership. One of Tomlin's greatest strengths has always been his ability to captivate a room and command respect. Flores brings that same presence. He's energetic, he's vocal, and he connects with players on a personal level. If you've ever watched him mic'd up, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Yes, there were issues during his time in Miami, reports of friction with players like Tua Tagovailoa. But Flores himself has admitted he grew from that experience. Coming out of the Bill Belichick tree, he initially leaned on that strict, tyrannical style that has sunk many of Belichick's former assistants. But since then, working alongside Mike Tomlin and Kevin O'Connell, Flores has openly talked about how he's learned to be a more positive, empowering leader. That evolution could make all the difference in his second shot as a head coach. And then there's his mind for defense. Let's call it what it is. Flores is a defensive mastermind, one of the top 5 defensive strategists in the NFL today. His ability to disguise coverages, rotate post-snap, and dial up creative blitz packages is exactly the kind of modern defensive approach that could keep Pittsburgh's tradition of defensive dominance alive. Imagine that paired with the talent already on this roster. The idea of Flores running this defense should make every Steelers fan sit up and pay attention. But what about the offense, especially if Pittsburgh is drafting a new franchise quarterback? That's where Flores' connections become crucial. He has ties within the Sean McVay coaching tree thanks to Kevin O'Connell, and he's especially close with Josh McCown, one of the hottest names in NFL coaching circles. McCown reportedly turned down coordinator and head coach interviews recently, waiting for the right opportunity. If Flores gets his shot, McCown could be in line to become his offensive coordinator. That means a modern, quarterback-friendly system, the exact kind of setup you'd want for a young passer in Pittsburgh. Of course, no story about Flores is complete without mentioning his lawsuit against the NFL. Could that scare teams away? Maybe some, but here's the thing. Flores has already had multiple head coaching interviews since then, including with the Bears, Jets, and Jaguars. Teams are clearly willing to consider him, and if there's one franchise that wouldn't shy away from hiring the best candidate regardless of outside noise, it's the Pittsburgh Steelers. Let's not forget, this is the organization that helped pioneer the Rooney Rule. If the front office believes Flores is the man, history suggests they'll make the move. Here's my take, Steelers Nation. If 2025 is a season of success, 10, 11, maybe 12 wins and a playoff run, then Mike Tomlin will be back. No question about it. But if the bottom falls out, if this season proves to be the start of a reset, then moving on from Tomlin and turning to Brian Flores could be the best possible way to launch a new era. A new coach with instant credibility, a modern defensive mind, and connections to the right offensive staff, plus extra draft capital from a Tomlin trade. That's the kind of bold move that could set up the Steelers for the next decade. Now I want to know what you think. If Mike Tomlin were traded and Brian Flores became the next head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers, how would you grade that move? Would it be an A, B, a C, or something worse? Drop your answers, because this conversation is only just getting started. Think about what this all really means for the identity of the Pittsburgh Steelers. For nearly 2 decades, the words stability and Mike Tomlin have been inseparable. In an NFL landscape where teams change coaches like they change socks, the Steelers have stood apart as a symbol of patience, loyalty, and long-term vision. Only 3 head coaches since 1969, Chuck Noll, Bill Cowher, and Tomlin himself. That's a legacy of consistency no other franchise can match. But consistency doesn't last forever, and the NFL is unforgiving. If the front office and ownership believe the current path won't deliver championships, they've proven before that they're not afraid to make bold moves when the time is right. Trading Tomlin, if it ever came to that, would be one of the most shocking decisions in franchise history. But here's why it's not as far-fetched as some may think. The demand for a proven, steady head coach is sky-high across the league. Look around at franchises that have cycled through 4, 5, even 6 coaches in the time Tomlin has been in Pittsburgh. Those teams are desperate for stability. They're desperate for someone who can walk into a locker room and immediately establish a culture. Tomlin offers exactly that. For a team on the verge of contention, giving up a high draft pick for Tomlin's services could be seen as the missing piece. And for the Steelers, that draft pick could mean the beginning of a new core, a new foundation to build upon during a reset. Enter Brian Flores, the name that keeps echoing through every hypothetical future scenario. His case doesn't just rest on familiarity or his defensive reputation, it's also about timing. Flores has already proven he can win games as a head coach. He turned around a Miami Dolphins team that was in disarray and led them to consecutive winning seasons. That experience matters. But more importantly, his journey since then shows growth. Flores isn't the same coach who left Miami. He's someone who has absorbed lessons from working alongside 2 of the NFL's best player-friendly leaders in Tomlin and Kevin O'Connell. That blend of tactical sharpness and improved leadership style is exactly what makes him a fascinating candidate for Pittsburgh. There's also a cultural fit here that can't be overlooked. Flores understands the Steelers' way. He's been inside the building, he's worked under Tomlin, and he's seen firsthand the standards set by the organization. Transitioning to him wouldn't feel like hitting reset on the identity of the franchise, it would feel more like continuing the tradition, but with a modern twist. That's important, because Steelers Nation doesn't just want wins, they want wins that feel like Steelers wins, built on toughness, defense, and leadership. Flores embodies that, and don't underestimate the significance of his connections to the offensive side of the ball. If the Steelers do draft a new franchise quarterback, the most important decision won't just be who the head coach is, but who's developing that quarterback. Flores' ties to Josh McCown and the wider Sean McVay coaching tree could give Pittsburgh exactly the kind of innovative offense they've been missing in recent years. Imagine pairing the Steelers' traditional defensive strength with a cutting-edge offensive philosophy. That's how you bridge the past with the future. Of course, there are risks. Some fans will argue that Flores' time in Miami shows he isn't cut out for the top job. Others will point to his lawsuit against the league and question whether it could bring unwanted distractions. These are fair concerns, but history tells us this. The Pittsburgh Steelers don't make decisions based on fear. They've always chosen to move boldly when it comes to leadership, from hiring the young and relatively unknown Mike Tomlin in 2007 to standing by him through highs and lows for almost 2 decades. If they believe Flores is the right man, those concerns won't hold them back. So let's piece it all together. On one side, you have Mike Tomlin, a coach who still commands the respect of his players, still has the ability to push a team to double-digit wins, and still represents stability in the chaos of the NFL. On the other side, you have the potential for change, a Tomlin trade that brings in high-value draft picks, a fresh start with Brian Flores at the helm. and the chance to align the next era of Steelers football with both defensive dominance and offensive innovation. Both options are compelling. Both could shape the franchise for years to come. And that brings us back to you, Steelers Nation. This isn't just about X's and O's. It's about identity, tradition, and the future of the team we all love. Do you stick with Tomlin and hope the current path finally leads back to Super Bowl contention? Or do you embrace the uncertainty of change, trading stability for the possibility of a bold new era under Flores? That's the question that hangs over this franchise, and it's one that could define the next decade of Steelers football. So now it's your turn. What do you think? If the front office pulled the trigger, traded Mike Tomlin for a high draft pick, and handed the keys to Brian Flores, would you call it a masterstroke or a massive mistake? Steelers Nation, drop your thoughts, your grades, and your gut feelings. Because this conversation isn't ending here, it's just getting started. And here's the truth, Steelers Nation, no matter which direction this story takes, it's going to be one of the most important crossroads in franchise history. Few teams in the NFL ever get the chance to move from one legendary coach to the next without falling into years of instability. Pittsburgh has done it before, from Chuck Noll to Bill Cowher, from Cowher to Tomlin, and now the question is whether they could do it again. The idea of Brian Flores stepping in might sound bold, even risky, but bold moves are what have defined this organization at its greatest turning points. Think about the ripple effect. A Tomlin trade would mean